Hey everybody, and welcome to the PC Gamer Show. My name is Tom Marks, assistant editor here at PC Gamer. With me is James Davenport, associate editor. Hey James, how you doing?
Good. Doing good.
Good. That was very declarative. You kind of had a thought, and then you were very sure.
I didn't know what kind of... I was going to think of a joke. I couldn't think of a joke quick enough, so I just defaulted to how I was doing.
Well, then we'll move on from that train wreck. We also are joined by Wes Fenlon, hardware editor.
Hey.
Welcome back, Wes.
Thank you.
Been a little while.
Has it?
I don't know. I've lost track. All of you guys are the same to me.
It's been a couple. Wow.
You people, I just blend together, and all I know is it's me here and then
Video
two others.
game boys, yeah.
The way you can tell that I am not Tim is I'm not here talking about Hearthstone, Destiny, Hearthstone.
Whoa.
I don't know how to distinguish me from Tyler though. I don't mumble as much.
You don't have the rasp, I think, is how.
He's got to get down
I haven't
here.
been smoking for 15 years.
We've got a great show, though, so let's stop shooting the shit and get into it, because I went to PAX this weekend, so we're going to be talking about what I saw there, some of my favorite stuff there. We also got a chance to play the Division beta this weekend, and we're going to be talking about our impressions of that. And then this is a new thing that we actually added very quickly to the show docket. Tales of Symphonia just came out on PC to some unfortunate porting news, and we're going to be talking about how that is, let's just say for now, less than ideal port of that game. And then, of course, we'll be taking your questions from Twitch chat. But first, let's talk about what we've been playing recently. Guys, what have you been playing? Because I've been at PAX, so I've been playing everything. But what about you, James?
I have a list here, because I've been playing a lot.
You.
Yeah.
So good at your job.
The Witness. I've been playing The Witness. I finished The Witness.
You finished it.
No longer playing The Witness.
No spoilers.
I won't spoil anything. And when I say finished, I mean you can complete like 7 of the game's main areas, I believe, and it'll unlock a thing, and then you can get to the air quotes end game from there. But that game it's an onion. It's got layers.
So you didn't like beat every puzzle.
Not even close. Not even
close. You got to what they call the end game.
Yeah, I mean, cool. Yeah, not even close. But so I finished it, and overall, very, very clever, very smart, well put together thing. I will say, I think it's a love-hate thing with The Witness. Maybe you guys have experienced this already, because you both have been playing it. Right?
I've been playing.
I've played a little, yeah.
Just a brief amount. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful to explore. There's a lot of mystery and some grand philosophy injected in there. And the puzzles themselves like riff on that one design. You know, you're drawing lines. I really hope he calls the postmortem doing lines or something. I've been tossing that around in my head for a bit. Don't know what to do with it yet. But The problem I have with it, I came away feeling a bit sour about the game because once you figure out a puzzle's conceit, like there's a language built into a lot of these puzzles, and there's a kind of a trick to different sets, and he'll layer these different tricks on one another. Is once you figure out what you have to do, it's just a matter of doing it, and the mystery and kind of the clever facade dissipates, and you're just kind of going through the motions after a certain point.
So you think there's too much repetition of the same concepts?
Yeah, and I mean, and some of the philosophy in the game seems to be like just like about Zen and doing things for the sake of doing them, and just elation for the sake of elation, of solving puzzles for the sake of solving puzzles.
And we just pulled up, for those watching on Twitch or YouTube, we just pulled up a gameplay trailer of the game, and one of the things that strikes me about it while I'm playing it is like I kind of almost don't even care at certain points if the puzzles are good. This game is damn gorgeous.
It's very gorgeous. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing all these different environments here, and it quickly it goes from like a desert scene to like these pink trees and these old ruins, and there's a lot of like built-in mythology.
You can absolutely feel the time, money, and love that went into this game. Like the reason it took them 7 years, because they built this island, and then they rebuilt it, and they rebuilt it, and they rebuilt it, and they just scrutinized every corner and every art asset, and made so many unique little pieces of art for each corner of the island. It is really, really gorgeous.
It's dense, and it feels like the game like doesn't feel compromised by budgetary or time concerns. It feels like something he really just like had a vision for, Jonathan Blow, and made it. And for that, I think it's admirable. And I'm still gonna return to it. I think it's worth playing, and I think it's like nothing else out there. It's probably gonna stand the test of time. We'll be talking about it in 20 years. But definitely go in, play. Don't feel like you need to rush through. Go in, just kind of chip away, wander around. Because you can sort of develop a bad relationship with this game if you butt your head against some of its walls too often, too much.
Well, I've been really enjoying it so far,
and you were really looking forward to this game for a long time.
Yeah, for a very long time. I'd say I've been wishing The Witness was out for at least 3 years. And I talked about that on the show last week a little bit, but I mean, it's lived up to what I was hoping it would be, is a really important thing to me. I'm not saying it's like a revolutionary puzzle game or anything like that. Just like it is exactly what I wanted from it. It's really pretty. It's really well made. It's really good puzzle design. Even if at a certain point you do kind of figure out the puzzles and then they become a little more menial. But what I will say is, and I'm not going to give anything away. I'm not going to spoil anything. But there was a moment that both Chris Livingston and I had in the game, and I think a lot of people have, where you kind of just like, you realize something about the world in some way, and the whole game just gets bigger in your eyes. And that's kind of all I'm going to say. But basically, I really liked that there was more to it than I thought initially. Like, I got 2 or 3 hours into the game before I was like, oh, there's this whole other thing I haven't even been doing. So I really liked that. And I don't want to say any more, because the act of discovering it was like a really cool whoa moment for me. So I'm gonna try to keep that ambiguous.
Yep. No. So check it out if you can.
Yeah, I don't think I've discovered that yet. I've probably played about 3 hours, something like that, over the weekend, and mostly just wandering around finding panels that I could figure out. Haven't figured out the damn Tetris pieces yet. At least I
haven't figured those out either.
Those are the worst.
I thought I understood how they worked, but applied as many solutions to them that seemed like would be the solution and was not. So still trying to figure out how to do those, and kind of wandering around finding things that I can figure out with the knowledge that I have yet. But I do like the density of the island. There's so many puzzles, and there are so many regions with different sets of puzzles, that if you are stuck somewhere, at least early enough where I am, I can just go somewhere else and find a new thing. It's not like there's no point at which I feel like I need to be butting my head up against a puzzle. Maybe that'll change after 20 hours, and I've
later on,
when I've done 300 of them or whatever. But right now, I like that openness, and there's just something new to discover if I get stuck.
And Zed Clampett in the chat says, sounds like a game you can play off and on for a long time. And I think that's probably true, and also it's probably true because the nature of the puzzles are very kind of standard puzzly, rather than like in Myst where you got to remember what you were doing before. Like, you don't really have to remember. You just have to remember
the sequence of actions.
Yeah.
You just need to remember the language of the game.
Exactly.
And that stuff, I mean, it sticks with you like any other thing. It's pretty easy to pick up on if you've left it for a while. So my advice, definitely take your time with it. Don't feel like you need to just uncoil this game immediately.
There is, though, the problem of, or maybe not a problem, but when you're solving a lot of those puzzles in a row and you figure out the mechanism of the puzzle, there's kind of a zen state you're going to get in where you get better. It's just practice. And you kind of get into the routine of knowing how to do that. And if you take a week off between play sessions, you're not going to remember. You're not going to have that muscle memory built up of like, okay, this is the way I approached this puzzle last time.
A lot of the puzzles deliberately throw you out of that zen state too. Well, where you'll figure out a mechanic, you'll just kind of like, you won't blow through a couple puzzles in a row, but you'll do them quicker than you would otherwise. And then all of a sudden, one puzzle will look like it follows the same mechanic.
But then it reverses it.
Yeah, and then it just flips it on its head, and you'll think it's goddamn impossible, and you'll that's the point at which you should just take a break and step away, because that Zen state you're in, or whatever you want to call it, it's hard to just turn that off if the sky is blue for 25 years of your life, and all of a sudden you realize it's not. It's hard to accept, and it's a lot of little moments like that over and over and over.
Probably flow state more than Zen state.
Flow state, yeah. I should say
the game is
Zen.
pretty Zen in general.
Yeah,
definitely.
Very chill.
Briefly, I want to just run through this other game I really want to recommend to everybody. The Aquatic Adventure of the Last Human. It's you actually pointed this out a couple weeks ago in chat, our work chat, and it's this 2D pixel art Metroidvania in which you are the last human on planet Earth after like a climate crisis.
And you're in a submarine?
You're in a submarine.
Are
you
a submarine?
Who knows what evolution does to us in the future, but we'll see. And it's a Metroidvania. It's $10 on Steam. It's probably one of the best Metroidvania style games I've played in a while. And by Metroidvania, I mean you're wandering an environment that you can, connects to different larger environments that have secrets, and it's kind of like a maze, and you're upgrading your ship and so on.
It's backtracking, right? That's always been a key thing of Metroidvanias to me, is that you reach a door that you can't go through, and then you have to go a different path, get a thing that lets you go through that door.
The difference with this game is there's very little of the map, the entire map, that you can't explore immediately.
Yeah.
The gating comes from the huge, crazy bosses you fight. So this is why I like this game. It feels like a Metroidvania stripped down to its most essential parts. You have this world you're exploring. It's beautiful. There's amazing music. It tells a very subtle, quiet story about what happened to the people. And
they all died.
They all died except you, submarine boy. Yeah.
Spoilers, man.
That's not subtle, but
not really. Well, I mean, there are little environmental cues that tell you maybe how something evolved. Or
And this was what was the name again?
The Aquatic Adventure of the Last Human. And so you'll immediately you'll just putter down to a giant open area, and then a huge octopus, gargantuan octopus, will just with one swipe destroy you.
I believe gargantuan octopus is called a kraken.
A kraken.
James?
Whatever, fuck. And so you can sit there and butt your head against it, or you can go out and find upgrades. You can fight different bosses. You can kind of tackle it at whatever pace you feel works for you. Eventually, you can get quicker. You can get a harpoon. You can get a whole bunch of upgrades and tackle these bosses. Really, really fun bosses. I would almost compare it to Shadow of the Colossus in their size and the way you take them down. So a lot of personality. I'm writing something on it. I have such strong feelings about this. It's my favorite genre. One of my favorite games I've played this year so far. I know we're early on, but check it out. The Aquatic Adventure of the Last Human. Do it.
That's exciting. When Kickstarter first became a viable platform for small indie developers, there were so many Metroidvania style games that got kickstarted and come through it, and then a lot of them haven't actually materialized 2 to 3.5 years later.
Yeah,
I'm still kind of waiting for Chasm, for Heartforth Alicia, for plenty of other ones.
Yeah,
and it's nice to see. That genre is I was worried about it being kind of oversaturated, but I think there's going to be a pretty clear differentiation between the ones that are really, really good and nail it, and the ones that are just okay. That aren't going to get much.
And this one's great. If you like boss battles, it's great, and difficulty, it's great.
So Wes, James has been telling us what he's been playing for 15 minutes
Sorry.
now.
I've been playing a lot. I could go on
What
about
have-
Tomb Raider too, but
What have you
I'll
been
spare you.
What
playing?
have I been playing?
I'm just gonna keep talking through James there. He said another
Blah,
game name,
blah,
and I was
blah,
like,
blah.
no.
Tomb Raider. So the only thing I've been played over the weekend was The Witness. Last week I was playing some Dragon's Dogma. That's kind of the main game I've been on for a while. It was Dragon's Dogma. I'm not really that far into it. Still kind of in the early areas, but I'm most of the way through one of the job classes. They don't call them classes, but whatever. I'm basically a rogue class. And that game is really built around you eventually mastering every job, or at least multiple of them. Because once you master one, you'll get some specific skills that you can keep equipped no matter what other job you switch to. So eventually you can take, a skill from one class that lets you move more quickly in heavy armor or something, and then pair that with another skill that increases your health or makes you faster or gives you more crit, or of all these different skills, and they can all pair together when you move between classes. So right now I'm kind of still early on, but I've gotten to the point where I've upgraded some armor, upgraded my dual knives that I carry around as a rogue, and had my first couple epic fights where I was leaping off a cliff onto the back of I just totally blanked.
Cyclops?
A Cyclops.
There you go.
That was it. I was trying to say ogre, but with one eye. Jumping onto the back
That's
of a
basically what they
Cyclops
are.
and, stabbing him in the head
Yeah.
while my party's basically just aggroing him and throwing fireballs and stuff at him. And then it was nighttime, and I was in this kind of cliffside area. And originally I started by shooting this trebuchet, not a trebuchet, a ballista that I'd found at him. And then I realized there was another ogre in the dark just chilling. And so they both came at me, and I killed both of them. And that was pretty epic.
That's
So that's a
awesome.
really fun game. The PC version has some... I guess it's not the fault of the PC version. It's the game in general has some kind of annoying, opaque design decisions that bug me, where there are many quests that will be locked off after you progress the story to a certain point, but it doesn't warn you at all. So I got one major side quest chain locked off that actually made it so that I couldn't go to a specific area based on that. And I had saved before doing a story quest because I was worried about this happening. And then it overwrote my save because it'll auto-save, but you can manually save, but they're the same slot. So then the next autosave overwrote my manual save and screwed me out of being able to go back. And
This
do
is
that
Dragon's
quest.
Dogma, right?
Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah.
So it's really fun. In spite of that, it has some little quirks, but the combat is awesome, and will keep me playing it probably for the next few weeks. Last week, I also went up to Seattle for 24 hours to go to a Steam VR event that Valve held. They had 12 I think VR games. So I played a lot of VR games. That was pretty fun.
And we can definitely talk about that when we get into PAX, because I've used a VR headset for the first time.
Oh,
Yeah.
for the first time?
Yeah.
What?
I mean, I'd use the Samsung Gear, but basically for the first time, yeah. Also, I real quickly want to give a shout out to Octavian1453 in the chat. Just subscribed to us on Twitch. So thank you very much, man.
Should I talk
appreciate
about
it.
a couple of the VR games?
Yeah,
the
please do.
standout ones?
Yes.
So my favorite of the group I played was actually a really simple game called Space Pirate Trainer. And it's very simple in that it was almost just like a demo or a prototype. It doesn't feel like a fully fleshed out game yet, but it's an intentional throwback to 80s arcade games like Galaga or Space Invaders, but kind of the VR version of that they imagined. So they want something really simple, pick up and play. And you basically have the two Steam VR controller wands, and you have your headset on. You can do some moving around to basically just dodge incoming attacks. And you're just standing on the deck of a space station. You got your spaceship behind you, and a bunch of robotic drones just come at you in waves and attack you, and you have to shoot them down. It's extremely simple, but the shooting is probably just the most immediately fun of any shooters I've played in VR. They weren't trying to replicate real guns.
Right.
So they didn't, I've played plenty of other ones where you have a shotgun or pistols or whatever, and they never have felt that punchy yet in VR. But these lasers, they just shoot lasers really fast. It just feels good and sounds good. And then there's a bit of more depth where you actually have a shield you can like pull out from behind you, and you can block attacks with that.
Like reach back?
You reach back.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, this is the new era of user interface is going to be all physical.
Neato.
So you can block attacks with that. You can shoot around it. You can actually like shoot yourself if you shoot the shield accidentally.
I meant to ask, like when you're shooting in VR, do you have reticles in this game? Can you see where you're pointing, or do you kind of just have to? Is it hand-eye coordinated?
There's no like on-screen dot. There's no laser sight or anything in this game. The default pistol, you could probably sight along the barrel just fine. I was mostly just free aiming it.
Right.
In the final game, they want to have a bunch of different weapon modes, and one of the one like variant that was in the game at this time was like a little railgun, so that you would actually have to charge up, and it had 2 dots on the scope, one close to you and one at the end of the gun, and it was really hard to actually get it in 3D space properly lined up, synced on a drone and shooting that, but it would be like a one-hit kill if you got him. So that was just really fun. Neat. And you quickly get into this when you get into the higher waves, and they're coming at you from multiple sides, like, and you take 3 hits and you're dead. So it's very very fast paced. You'll get into the swing of like start with 2 guns, just like unload on them, and then you get like the 3D positional audio cue of like, oh shit, one of them's charging up on my left side. And so you like pull out the shield and like block to the left while you step backwards and like, or lean sideways and aim to shoot another guy. It does like some slow-mo bullet time when stuff's incoming at you, so you can kind of dodge it. So that game was really, really fun and very simple, and I hope they have enough time before they release it to flesh it out with some more weapons. They were talking about doing like a kind of a roguelike upgrade tree where after every round you could pick like one new gun upgrade or something, but obviously at the end of the game you would just go back to square one. There were a lot of other cool games. Budget Cuts is it was a cool name, and it's an interesting like kind of stealth adventure game, I guess. So the level I played, you're making your way through this research facility trying to get, I don't actually remember what the mission was. I think you were just trying to get to an office to get some information or something. But there are just like robots wandering around that'll kill you. And the way you move around is you have a device that you shoot like a little ball out of, and that opens a portal wherever it lands. And then you can look through the portal, and then you can press another button to warp to it. So you can actually fully explore this 3D space in VR by walking around your immediate area physically and looking around, opening drawers, that kind of thing, and then throwing the portal and warping to that, and then having a new little area you can explore. Worked really well, and a lot of it was like going through vents and going into the ceiling and stuff. So you would like look through a vent, throw the portal through it, and then you could kind of see, is there any robots in this room? No, I'm good, and warp in there. That was cool. There was also Hover Junkers, which is going to be an 8-player multiplayer shooter in VR.
Hover Junkers is one of the ones
You got to play that?
No, I saw previously, and it's one of my like most anticipated. It's one of the few games for the Vive that specifically makes me want a Vive in its mechanics, because you're on like a moving platform, right?
Yeah. So
and I thought that was such a good way to explain why you can only walk around like a small area.
It was a good way for that, exactly. And also the biggest problem with first-person VR is the any like motion acceleration creates nausea.
Yeah.
That is like the biggest killer of VR in terms of motion is first person. When you start moving, the acceleration ramp will make you a little queasy, especially if you're very sensitive to it. So with this, it's you're not walking in first person. You're just like on a barge, and you use like a throttle basically to control your movement, and that limits the area you can walk around, like you said. And it's kind of just like a free-for-all shooter, but they're gonna have They have a bunch of different modes, I guess, in the game already. They cited GoldenEye as their inspiration.
It feels that way.
Which is sounds good to me. GoldenEye had so many fun, different game modes. So,
yeah, that's a good way to sell a game.
So like you're going to be able to have 2 people on a barge, and you can have one person like driving around and like picking up scrap and bolting that onto the barge to protect you, and the other person could just like have guns out and be shooting. Other modes, single player is an option as well. So I think that game's gonna be pretty cool, and it'll be one of the few VR games with multiplayer at the outset. I mean, we've got stuff like, you know, Elite Dangerous and Eve Valkyrie, but on the Vive side, we haven't seen much like dedicated multiplayer. So that one's gonna be interesting. There were a lot of other great games too. I wrote them all up on the site. There weren't really any that I disliked. There were some that I kind of was like, I don't know if this is gonna do much, but probably 6 games that were really promising and interesting, and they're all very different, which is cool. So VR, it's happening. It's on its way. It's exciting.
Well, let's move on to talking about PAX because and my experience with VR, because I got to use what I was originally told was a Crescent Bay, but then also later told was a CV1 Oculus. What? So I'm not sure which it was. Do they look different?
Yes.
Okay, then I think I was using a CV1 because it was very smooth and matte.
What was the game?
It was a kind of demo build of you could choose between 7, and I played Eve Valkyrie, Lucky's Tale, and then there was also Edge of Nowhere I played, and there were a couple others.
So was this at an Oculus booth?
This was at AMD's booth, and they had partnered with Oculus.
It was a CV1.
Okay.
The only people I think who were using, I think not many people in general had Crescent Bay kits. That was like they kept that pretty close to their vest, I think, because you can really tell like who is at these events, like who is in as a partner and who is just making some weird VR stuff on the side. Because if they have a Vive or they have like a CV1 or Oculus headset, they are in good working terms. Otherwise, they're using a DK2 Oculus that anyone could buy.
And there was something that I noticed about that too, was I played when I used the Vive, because I also used 2 versions of the Vive, the old version and the pre. And the old version was at this game called Marble Mountain, which was basically just like a 3D Marble Madness kind of platformer.
I'd play the shit out of that.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. It was like, it wasn't very pretty, but it was pretty fun. And then I used the pre on this thing called the Verzoom bike, which is a stationary bike where the faster you pedal, the faster you move in game. And they had 3 demos there, where one was you were riding a horse lassoing cowboys, one was you were flying a Pegasus, and then the last one was you were an F1 like race car racing. Which was a workout, but it was also like really weird. Like I could see it being actually a lot of fun. They were telling me that they had talked to the developers of Eve Valkyrie and were actually trying to get it compatible with that, so that you could make your spaceship fly faster by pedaling faster, basically.
Flintstones shit.
It sounds kind of cool, right?
What did you say the first demo was on the bike?
On the bike, it was you were a cowboy on a horse lassoing.
So at
criminals.
no point was the game you on a bike.
No, very intentionally too. And I was like so surprised at that, because I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna do virtual reality bicycling, and they were like, no, we don't make a bike game. The other 2 that they make are a tank game, and I can't remember the 5th one.
What do they have against bikes?
So they were saying that if you doing anything that you have done in the real world in VR, especially with a controller that makes it feel like you're doing that thing, feels terrible. Because if you're on a stationary bike in VR riding a real bike, you'll go, this doesn't make any sense. I'm not pedaling the same speed that I'm moving. It doesn't feel right. It just is off.
Okay.
But if you're on a Pegasus pedaling to fly through the air, it for some reason your brain is just like, okay, I am a Pegasus. Like it does that.
Do you guys remember the arcade game where you would get on a bike and it had like a really large screen in front of you, like triple screen or something, and your bike was represented in this world as like a bicycle powered airship? And you would have to fly through like a bunch of canyons and stuff. And I think balloons were like the time extend bonus. You would collect these balloons. It was was fucking awesome. I don't I don't remember the name of it, but I remember it came out at that kind of, I guess, like late 90s arcade era where the companies were experimenting with some kind of more out there arcade machines to try to draw people in. I loved that game. That game was really cool.
So I really liked VR.
I hope someone in chat knows what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, if you do know what Wes is talking about, hit us up in the Twitch chat. But I really enjoyed it. And I came away from it more excited for VR and glad that I pre-ordered an Oculus Rift and all that sort of stuff, right? So it was overall an entirely positive experience for me. I didn't experience anything I would call presence, but I think that was also because I was on a really loud show floor with people talking to me while it was going on, and it was not the right place to be lost in a game.
Sure.
The thing I was kind of expecting or it didn't come true, I guess. I think I had a little too high of expectations. I think I should have tempered my expectations a little bit, because when I got into I looked at something like Lucky's Tale, and I knew that game was not going to be this visually explosive game, but I was expecting something like Eve Valkyrie to look really, really gorgeous, and while it did look really good, I could tell that it wasn't as pretty as I was expecting it to be. Like, the textures felt a little old because VR is so much harder to run. The actual experience was amazing. It was so cool to like have a fighter coming at me and it would go over my head, and instead of having to like look at my map and figure out where it was, I would just look up and I would just follow it with my eyes.
Was the demo you played of Eve the one where partway through like a bunch of capital ships warp in? That is a pretty amazing experience to be in there isolated in space, and then at any angle you want, looking like upwards and sideways kind of skewed, and just seeing like 7 giant ships just like warp into space and then be kind of flying near each other, and you can fly up in between them is pretty badass.
Yeah, it was very cool. I guess it'll just be interesting to see how graphics evolve, and I think it's interesting that VR has almost reset the bar of what graphics are. The last like year or so, PC gaming graphics have hit this wall where they're just getting so good that only what you can do is just increase the frame rate and increase the resolution, but the actual graphics themselves have kind of plateaued a little bit. But VR kind of totally resets that. It's just what technology has to advance in order to hit that same level of fidelity is so much harder now, and I'm really excited that technology is going to have this thing to push graphics card forward again. I came away from it really happy, but let's move on because we've talked about a lot of VR on this show, and I want to talk about some of the other games that I played there.
Prop Cycle, by the way. Prop Cycle was the game I was talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
Namco. Thank you, Namco.
There's some talk in the chat about Elite dropping support for the Oculus, and that's not true.
No. There's a lot of confusion around that, and I don't know how that happened.
There was actually, I specifically went up to somebody who works at Frontier at PAX South and said, hey, this isn't for an article or a video or anything. Out of my own curiosity, can you clarify the deal with VR support on Elite? And he was like, oh yeah, we took it off sort of temporarily because we want to really make sure it's right, but you can download things that let you do it right now, and they have every intention of bringing back full VR support for whatever headset will work with them, basically. They're not going to lose Oculus support. They're not going to only go to the Vive, anything like that. They're going to make Elite open to people, so don't worry about that.
I believe right now, maybe this was just speculation, but I think part of the reason they're not working on the Oculus support at this very moment is they're waiting for the SDK to make the shift from pre-release SDK that was a few months old to whatever kind of gets finalized in the last few months leading up to Oculus release, because obviously Oculus is in full-on, hit 1.0 mode as they lead up to the release of the consumer headset. But I played Elite on the Vive, last week, and they have no reason to not have full Oculus support. Valve is not doing exclusivity deals with anyone that they have said they're not planning on doing that. Maybe that'll change in the future, but right now no one is being exclusive to the Vive through any kind of contract or third party like agreement or anything. If there are games only coming to the Vive right now, it's because they want to use room scale tracking, or because they had a better relationship with Valve and could get hardware or something like that. It's not because someone signed a piece of paper that said, I am only going to put my game on this one headset.
Yeah. But so besides you, Valkyrie and Lucky's Tale and those kind of VR games, I played probably at least 20 different games this PAX.
You made a few videos, yeah.
Yeah, I did filmed 15 interviews, and it was quite a weekend in 3 days. So if you guys have any questions, either in the chat or you two, about things I'd seen, chat, I might not be able to grab until the end of the show, but let me hear them. The biggest thing is I always, I get asked what was the best thing you saw, and I kind of have two answers for this. My two favorite things that I played at PAX South were Umbrella Corps.
What?
Which is Capcom's competitive shooter set in the Resident Evil universe.
Impossible.
I know, right? Weird. And the other one was this game that's on Kickstarter right now called Invisigun Heroes. So first, Umbrella Corps. I'll pull up a video of it. For those who don't know, it's a 3v3 really, really fast-paced shooter in the Resident Evil world.
I know that.
Made by a U.S. developer?
I'm not entirely sure, actually.
I'm pretty sure it's not Capcom Japan.
But it's really fun. It's rounds last a minute less than, and the mode I played was just one life, best of 5 rounds, 3v3, kill the other team. And the coolest part about it is that there are zombies all over the map. The shooting is really fun.
That's the village from Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, so right now you're looking at a level that is the village from Resident Evil 4, and the zombies on the map are the villagers from Resident Evil 4. And there's another one where it's like it's like Africa in Resident Evil 6 or 5 or whatever it was.
So it's humans versus humans with AI just in there to mess shit up?
Yes.
That sounds annoying.
It's humans versus humans with AI in there that are just AI zombies, but everybody has this thing on their back it's called, I think, like a zombie disruptor or something, and it's just this thing that makes
like
you
a
immune to
Ghostbusters
zombies.
proton
Yeah, right, basically.
Across the street.
But it's actually the coolest part of the game, because for the most part, if a round goes quick enough, you don't ever really interact with the zombies, because they won't attack you as long as you have your disruptor. But if you shoot out another person's disruptor, zombies go after them.
Why wouldn't you just shoot the person?
Well, you can, but they take a lot of hits because they got armor on. If you hit so if you're getting into a firefight with someone and you like pop off a few shots, destroy their disruptor, and then run away, and then the zombies finish them off, you get credit for the kill because you were the one who stopped their disruptor. And similarly, if they shoot a zombie, then the zombies will come after them. But what ends up happening is you have these really cool engagements where it's really lightning fast because it's only 3v3, and you can kind of win fights that you die in because you kill disruptors or something like that. There was actually a moment that this was one of the coolest moments I had while playing, and I only played 3 rounds of 5, but one of the coolest moments I had was I shot this dude's disruptor out, and he was far away. We were shooting like down a hallway, and the levels are very claustrophobic. They're kind of what you think of as Resident Evil levels. They're hallways. There's some verticality to them. It's very. I only played a one map, but it's very claustrophobic. And I shot out his disruptor, and then he retreated. And I ran down the hallway after him, and I didn't know where he went because he went around a couple corners. Except all of the zombies were walking in one direction. So I just followed this line of zombies, and my disruptor was fine. I just followed this line of zombies down these winding hallways and found the dude and shot him while he was running away from me. And it was a really cool moment. It was it was so satisfying to have used the zombies tactically like that.
Okay.
I was also pretty proud of the way I performed because it was demoed on PC but with PS4 controllers. For some weird reason. Yeah. I think it was because they were trying to show off this like emote thing. Each round starts with like a radial wheel where you can be like,
oh, hell yeah.
I want frontal assault, or I'm going to go to the right, or we should stay together.
Oh, I thought you were going to say jumping jacks or something.
No, it's not the Division.
Do the Carlton.
But it was, Zombie Jammer. Thank you, Will Chesney.
Not the Disruptor?
Not Disruptor. Jammer. It's Jammer, Zombie Jammer. I've been saying Disruptor like a ton, but yeah, Zombie Jammer. And it was just really fun. It was shocking how much fun it was. I went into that demo being like, this game is going to be kind of a boring shooter with zombies, and I want to play more of it. And the other thing that Capcom told me, it's coming out in May, and it's going to be $30. So they're not pitching it.
Maps or anything?
I think they've announced 3 maps right now, and they wouldn't tell me what they're doing post-launch support. And there's other game modes too.
Okay.
But and you choose, your loadout. You choose like if you want to be, have different weapons or different things. You can have a grenade that'll also disrupt zombies with the grenade. It just seems really cool. Jam, whatever.
Jam those zombies.
Thanks, Wes.
Jam 'em real.
I don't know. I'm gushing a little because I was so shocked at how much I liked it. It was just really fast paced and aggressive and had mechanics I hadn't seen in other shooters.
I think the general response to that game being announced was just a giant eye roll. From
it was,
everyone,
including
For
myself.
me, I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, and that it seems like a very weird direction. But if it's a good shooter, and well, it sounds like it's does a lot of fan service.
Our UK editor Samuel Roberts, like secret shame, is he really likes Resident Evil 6. He likes the action.
I couldn't do it.
I always loved mercenary mode in the last few games, and I never got to play it in 6, which is probably the only way I could stand that game because I don't think I could stand the story anymore. But that makes me interested in this game, even if it's, I think, totally different dev teams, not really related. But if these guys kind of looked at what Resident Evil 6 did right, to the extent it did anything right, and built a smart game around that, then that's cool.
And it didn't feel like Resident Evil 4 shooting. It didn't
look like it, yeah.
It didn't feel like... It is third person, right? But it didn't feel as methodical and slow. It was very, very quick combat. And a lot of rounds, the zombies didn't even come into play because you would just kill each other so quickly. And then there were other rounds where I got my disruptor shot out and I was camping out in this stairwell and I knew where the guy was and I was just aiming my sights on him, but zombies were coming after me, and the zombies don't stay dead. You can shoot them to kill them, and then after a few seconds they'll get back up and kind of keep going after you. So I was sitting in this stairwell, and every about 5-10 seconds I'd have to just turn and kill a wave of zombies that I had just killed and then turn back at the door waiting for him. It was pretty fun.
Interesting.
Another great game that I played, this was my other favorite game at the event, was a game called Invisigun Heroes. It's in Kickstarter right now, so if you do like what you see with this conversation, I highly recommend you go check out their Kickstarter. It's a party game, and it's the most exciting kind of competitive party game I've seen since Towerfall. And what it is it's kind of a mix of Bomberman and Towerfall, except you're completely invisible. So we brought up some gameplay right now. It's 2v2. You can't see your character at all unless you shoot. And then you become visible for a brief second. And if you run into something, if you run into a wall, the wall will kind of shimmer your color. So that's how you can tell where you or the other people are. And the whole level is on a grid, and your D-pad moves you one square at a time, or your keys.
Okay.
So you can very accurately map out exactly where you are and keep track of where you are, but have no idea where the others are. And it was just... It was the first game since Towerfall in this vein where I picked it up and I was like, this is as easy as Towerfall to learn, and also just has a huge skill cap in how you would master it. So the way they keep everybody going is that these presents with power-ups drop in the center of the map. So the guy who went to the center in this video got a revealer, and then the opponent was revealed for a short amount of time. So if you don't go to the center, you kind of get this Hunger Games cornucopia thing going on where everyone has to get there, but you probably die. And it's just done in rounds of best of 5, and it's just really exciting. It was so good. It was so well made in everything about it. I came away really impressed with that game.
Interesting. When I was at Double Fine's Day of the Devs event a couple months ago, James was there too, actually. Yep. I played a game that's kind of similar in concept, where each player is, I guess you can see where you are, but you can't see where the other player is, and vice versa for them. And you had to kind of walk around this grid.
Bad Blood?
Was that what it was called? I couldn't remember the name at all. But there were a bunch of different characters, and each one had a different attack they would use, and you'd have to kind of try to pinpoint where the other player was based on some environmental clues, like some grass would rustle depending on where they were, and then try to attack them and land your one-shot kill. And that was pretty fun.
Pretty sure it's Bad Blood. So Google that.
Well, the other interesting thing was that Umbrella Corps was not the only PvP zombie shooter that I played at PAX. And the other game that I played was one called Moving Hazard, which I'll show a little bit of gameplay from. And this one is, again, it's 4v4 competitive first-person shooter where there are neutral zombies on the map.
I played this at CES, actually. They were demonstrating that the game incorporates Corsair's RGB lighting stuff.
Revolutionary.
So, like, the keyboard would light up when you needed to reload and stuff like that.
And the gimmick with this one was that you throw a grenade that makes the zombies fight for your team, and then you can kind of wrangle zombies to go fight for you.
If they get caught in the radius of the grenade explosion, they are colored. Is that what I'm seeing?
Exactly.
For you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was fun, but the weird thing was I was really digging Moving Hazard, and it's going on early access pretty soon, actually. I believe it's going on early access like next month. And I'm interested to see where that game was going. It is going, but then I went to Umbrella Corps, and it was such a more kind of refined experience already because they're not going into early access that I found myself more impressed with Umbrella Corps than Moving Hazard. Not that Moving Hazard was bad. I thought it was very fun. It was definitely earlier in its development life. And the lead designer of this was the designer of Red Dead Redemption. So it's got a pedigree behind it.
Obviously, yeah. You can really see the...
Just like Undead Nightmare.
Yeah.
It's all
Exactly.
all in there.
That was such a great DLC.
So Moving Hazard was interesting. There were some other things that I really liked. Probably the last game that really, really impressed me was this game that Tiny Build is publishing called The Final Station.
They're doing a lot.
Yeah, Tiny Build is doing a lot. And The Final Station is this sort of like base management game where you drive a train in the post-apocalypse, basically. It seems like the post-apocalypse, but I don't think it definitely is.
Is it Snowpiercer?
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's kind of. But then you have to stop your train and land at stations to get food and fuel and find other people to rescue. And sometimes your train will break down and you have to go stop to get parts. And the game is linear. It's not procedurally generated or anything. It's not like a survival game. And it was just really, really fun. It was incredibly impressive in its details as well.
Looks pretty.
Yeah, pixely. Lots of pixel games. Lots of pixel games.
Well, you know.
We're rapidly closing in on the time in our like nostalgia culture where PS1 era, like shimmery, low res texture graphics become the new like vogue.
I hope so.
Indie genre.
Yo, I hope
it's gonna happen.
So hard.
It's gonna happen. Please.
Octavian, the game was called The Final Station. That was it was. I'd say look it up if you like games like that. It kind of looked like, what was that game? Oh man, the survival-y one, This War of Mine.
Oh.
It's kind of the same style, like side-scrolling, buildings are cut in half as you walk through them sort of look, but pixely. That Zalia-esque guy asks, was anything about Escape from Tokarev brought up while you were at PAX? I didn't see anything. Do you guys know what that game is?
Nope.
There you go. There were a lot of games, though. Another really good game I played was called Ultimate Chicken Horse. Wes, you showed me that one
I want this.
a while back.
Did I?
Yeah.
I feel like I should remember that.
Maybe I did.
Maybe you did. Ultimate Chicken
got
Horse
excited
is the
about
one where it's a combination of chicken and horse, but like in a Super Meat Boy style platformer. So it's another party game, local party game, and basically you try to get from point A to point B, but everybody at the beginning of each round gets a random item that they get to place on the map, and it could be stairs or a platform or a saw blade or an arrow shooter. And the goal is to try to make the obstacle course hard enough to get through that your opponents can't, but easy enough that you can. So it's a game of chicken in how hard you're making it, but it's also a game of horse in that anything they do, you have to do. And it's just another silly party game. There were a lot of silly party games.
I did not expect the literal like element to that name.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
To be
Well, and you play as a chicken and a horse, don't you?
Yeah, there are like 9.
So.
There are 9 like animals.
Fun
You can also be
animals.
the ultimate chameleon if you want.
Oh, hell yeah.
And there were a couple that were added by their backers.
Hasn't
apparently.
Gex already? No, Gex is a gecko.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Come
Have
on,
you guys
man.
read the Gex backstory?
Camellia's still. What?
Have you guys read the Gex backstory? Like Gex origin story?
No, I hope it's NC-17.
God, go to the Wikipedia and someday and just look up the Gex origin story. It's fucked up.
What?
Moving on. Moving on.
I'm like kind of horrified now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually the story
man.
of Magic Mike.
Okay.
Same story.
Oh, jeez. Well, we can move on. Was there anything you guys are curious that I saw at PAX? I really liked Dreadnought was interesting too, which is that
they
big,
showed that, huh?
Yeah, I got to play Dreadnought. It was that big spaceships fighting each other game, but kind of similar to what Tyler was saying.
By Jaeger.
It's got like it's not a MOBA, but it's got that MOBA sensibility of the strategy is not something that you can just pick up in one sitting. Mm-hmm. So it was fun to play, but I also had no idea what I was doing while I was playing it.
Yeah, hard to demo that. I can imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. There were some other things. Cluster Truck. I talked about Cluster Truck before on the site. Cluster Truck got picked up by Tiny Build.
Oh, nice.
A couple days before the event. Huh. So when I went to visit Tiny Build's booth, there was Cluster Truck there, and I was like, "Whoa, you guys! I didn't know you guys were publishing this." And he was like, "Yeah, we announced it like 2 hours ago." I was like, "Oh,
that's really cool."
Okay.
That's something you picked up on like a subreddit or something a long time ago, didn't you? And you had an early interest in that.
Yeah, it was. I found it on the R Game Physics subreddit.
Yeah, there you go.
It's
Great
a pretty
subreddit.
It's a pretty funny little game. Yeah. There was just a lot of really good stuff at PAX. I was really impressed with all the games.
Cool.
A lot of stuff I had never seen before too.
Let's move on.
Yes, let's talk about The Division.
I will not talk about it. I have not played The Division.
So you hadn't played it. I played it last night some, and then with James. And James, you've played it
I played
before.
about 4 or 5 hours or so of that thing.
You say with a sigh.
I have complex feelings.
Dude, I do too.
Well, okay, you had a briefer time with it. You kind of took the plunge last night. How did you come away?
I don't know, man. Like, I was kind of the opinion that with RPG shooters, everyone was saying it was a bullet spongy game. Enemies were bullet spongy. Yeah. And I was of the opinion that with RPG shooters, that's not a terrible thing. Like, I did not mind that in Borderlands, right? In Borderlands, a lot of the enemies are just super hard to take down and can take a lot of bullets. And I don't really mind it in Borderlands. I really minded it in The Division.
Why?
I don't know. I think it might be because you're shooting people in hoodies and they can take 20 bullets.
Yeah, the fiction is a lot more grounded than Borderlands, where you're shooting psychopaths with a gun that talks to you.
And it also seems super arbitrary.
How so?
Like, you would come across a group and there'd be like one elite enemy in that group of people, and that elite enemy was just sort of arbitrarily 3 times as strong as the other ones and didn't look any different and didn't do anything different.
Same dude in a hoodie.
Yeah, but they could do, they could take 100 bullets instead of 20. Yeah. And it just felt... I had fun, and this is why I'm conflicted. I had fun with what I played,
right?
But I don't know how long it would interest me, and I think the answer is not very.
It all depends. I mean, the beta is a very small slice of that game. The beta right now takes you through like a small intro where you establish your base of operations, which in the final game you can upgrade in all sorts of ways. We don't really know how that impacts anything you do. You get access to like one skill tree, but I don't know if you can get all the skills in it. So there's like two or 3 skills you can access, maybe 5, I don't remember. But they're all pretty mundane, like heals people, pings the immediate area for enemies.
I liked the sticky bomb gun.
Yeah, that was
like
cool.
A grenade launcher with a sticky bomb that you could detonate later. That was cool.
So you do that, and then there's one story mission you can do. Or campaign mission, and it's pretty linear. You just there's waist high things in the environment. You go hide behind and pop dudes with your buddies.
Pretty world though.
It's very detailed. It's post-apocalyptic, or it's not really the apocalypse. Post-virus.
Post-disease, yeah. Post-human is one of the words.
Sure. New York, Manhattan area, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it looks great, but ultimately what you're walking around in is just a bunch of snowy streets.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a couple buildings you can explore, but what's in those of value? Well, occasionally a loot crate, occasionally some bad guys that you shoot again and again.
Did you guys get any sense from the beta how much of the game that represented?
That's what I don't know.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it 10%? Is it 50%?
You mean
Is it 1%?
You mean specifically what was playable in the beta?
Yeah, scale of the environment, scale of your level up progression and
it's very. That's the thing is it's very very small.
Yeah.
They don't even let you have access to the perk system, which could make combat really interesting and funky, right?
Right.
The loot you can get is pretty limited, right? You can't get high level, supposedly funky, interesting, unique loot. There's a bit of that,
which supposedly exists.
Well, I guess I would imagine it's an RPG. They want you to feel unique and specialized, and I imagine this is all like hopeful imaginings, and this is all I can really glean from what I've played is that they are going to do some of that stuff.
I think the answer is if this is all there is, the game is in trouble. But I got the vibe that this was definitely not all there is.
No. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, it's just hard to say.
To me, the most interesting part of the game is the Dark Zone.
Yeah, and the Dark Zone we got to run around it a little bit. Although, even in the beta, we jumped into our first Dark Zone, and it was me and Chris and James, and immediately Chris was a higher rank than us, so he got put into a different Dark Zone instance, and the one James and I was in had some dude who was invisible and hacking and just murdering us instantly.
I heard there are some pretty bad problems with the PC version for hacking.
Supposedly they're going to fix it.
Yeah. It was pretty obnoxious, though.
They better fix it, obviously.
Once we jumped into Chris's Dark Zone, which was technically too high of a level for us, it was way more fun.
Yeah, so what you're doing in the Dark, it's a PvP zone, that exists in the open world. And a lot of the same things you do in the main open world you can do here. Specifically, you're wandering the environment, maybe doing small missions here and there, and encountering mobs of hoodied men who have purple health bars. Some of them have yellow health bars that you shoot for 30 seconds each, and and they die. And then sometimes you get loot, which can be loot specific to the Dark Zone, which can be a cool beanie or a winter parka or something. Nothing very cool so far.
Chris, we got into the game, and Chris, when he joined our team, was like, "We got to get you a hat, Tom." And I was like, "Oh, this is what this game is about."
Yeah. And so in the Dark Zone, it's cool because you can see other players running around, and at any point, you can technically shoot them, right? So you can engage in a firefight if you want. The only reason you would want to do that is because to get the loot you pick up in the Dark Zone out of the Dark Zone, is you call in a chopper that sets off a timer. I think it's in a minute and 30 seconds, something like that. And you have to wait for the chopper to come down, attach it to the little pulley it drops, and then it whisks it away.
And that's basically a beacon that says, "Come steal my shit."
That's a beacon that says, "Come steal my shit." And other players, you'll just see, you'll do the pulse, and you'll see just the outlines of 6 bodies coming from all directions. And it gets pretty tense because everyone's there and no one's technically initiated a firefight yet. Because when you do, you enter a rogue status, which then marks you on the map to everybody, and people get rewarded for killing you.
You called it a PvP zone, but there was a surprising amount of civility in it.
Yeah,
it's like a Cold War.
So
it's really tense. It's really tense.
Because people have incentive to not attack you because if they can potentially use your drop as well to extract some of their loot, right? You can work together. And there are funny ways people are starting to communicate. There's a couple emotes. One of them is jumping jacks for whatever fucking reason. And so a peace sign that Chris and I and Tom, Chris and I have started using was just doing jumping jacks. It's it's kind of putting your hands in the air and saying, "We're cool here. We're cool here. Let's just chill."
Which is funny because there is a surrender emote, but no, you guys go straight to jumping jacks.
Or clap infinitely. There's a clapping emote that will never stop until you tell it to.
Actually never stop.
It's great. So yeah, I mean, it's a cool, tense moment, but it can devolve quickly into quite the clusterfuck if you're not careful.
And what happened to us last night before I signed off was really interesting. And it was like, at the time, I was super mad about it. But after the fact, I kind of like what happened is we called in an airdrop or an air pickup or whatever. And this other group of 3 people showed up as well. And we were all cool about it. We all hung out.
Did our jumping jacks.
We did our jumping jacks. We were even on the voice comms, like talking to them, how it was all cool. Everyone chill, you know. And then the first chopper came. Everybody put their bags on it, but you could only put 4 bags at a time on
Something
a chopper.
Like that,
which also is an incentive to kill other people because then I couldn't put my stuff on. So we called in another chopper, you know.
Yeah.
We defended a couple waves of NPCs. And then the other guys who didn't have to drop anything off kind of gathered together. And so I was like, this is, and everyone, all of us were like, this is really suspicious.
They didn't do jumping jacks.
And so what happened is after I put my stuff on, they started shooting at Chris, but intentionally missing. So I returned fire, shot them, which put me in a rogue state because I was the first one to hit them.
Took the bait.
And then all of us were in a rogue state because we were in a group, and they just cleaned us up and got the reward for it.
Yeah, and when you're in a rogue state, it's a huge risk because you can lose experience. You can drop a loot you picked up in the dark zone, and you have to respawn and go, do it again.
So the stuff that you would put on the chopper, you lost?
No, the stuff I put on the chopper went away.
Yeah.
They did it badly because if they had done it right, they should have done it right before I did that.
Or maybe they kind of liked you guys, but they just wanted to get your,
I don't know.
It's interesting because the motive is it's always unclear, and that's like the most interesting part of the Division is the dark zone for these moments. It's just a matter of like, the shooting doesn't feel great all the time. It's a cover shooter. It's Gears of War in a PvP environment. Maybe it depends on the weapons and perks in the high level play. It'll get more interesting. But anything outside of the dark zone, like in the main campaign, just feels pretty well tread. It feels kind of old and.
Shazira says, "Hey, it's cold. Why not jumping jacks?" Which is a fair point. Gotta stay warm.
What do they call them in the UK? What was it? Starman?
Jumping stars, right?
Jumping stars.
Star jumps.
Star jumps. It's great.
I don't know. I just couldn't find myself like. I think the game is well made and it's pretty and it's cool. I have a feeling it's got similar problems to Evolve, which is a terrible thing to say about a game, and I don't mean to say it's, like Evolve specifically, but to me it's like that because it's a very well-made game. It has nothing particularly wrong about it, but just the gameplay loop that they have created, I can't see myself wanting to play very much. And I think that's not an issue about any of their execution of anything. Just I'm not really interested in doing what they've tasked me to do over and over. Because when we were in the dark zone, we were basically just wandering empty streets, and then every time we'd hear a gunshot, we'd run towards the gunshot. And those moments where there were other people and we were at a landing zone or something were thrilling, and they were very cool, and they were tense. But the in-between and the stuff you had to do to get to those moments was super bland.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd argue that mechanically something is off with it in that the shooting is not fun. I wish Tim was here to speak on behalf of Destiny players, and I'm sorry to invoke Destiny PC gamers. Please forgive me. But Destiny is getting a lot of comparisons to this game because you do RPG things, you wander open environments and accomplish menial tasks. In Destiny, the shooting itself is really good. It's very satisfying. The combat's fun to do over and over and over and over. It's like popping bubble wrap and getting a piece of candy every now and then, In the Division, I don't feel like I'm popping bubble wrap when I'm firing, 4 clips into, a guy with an orange bar above his head who, looks the exact same as everyone else.
Yeah, there was just something about, Panzerg in the chat mentioned earlier that he thought headshots were really satisfying, but I actually had a kind of opposite reaction where I didn't think that it just felt weird to get a headshot on a person in a hoodie in a realistic world and not have them just die, you know? And I know that obviously they can't just do that because that would make the game totally broken, and what's the point? But like, it just felt weird. It just felt dissonant.
Yeah, sci-fi premises in RPGs can kind of get away with a lot of that stuff. But I don't know. Point is, The Division remains right now a pretty big mystery.
Yeah,
a mystery that maybe we're less intrigued by based on what we played, but still something I want to know a lot more about.
And you're basically you're basing your hopes around the fact that there's much more to it than what you played.
Yeah, so, basically. I mean, I'm lukewarm on it, but I don't necessarily think that means that it's doomed or anything. And if you're still interested in it, then more power to you. Like, it's just that I think we need to see what's past the beta, you know? I think that's just really the answer. And also, it is a beta. So if Ubisoft hears this criticism that everyone is saying, oh, all the enemies are bullet spongy, I hate it, maybe that is something that they can just tweak in the numbers, you know, and they can make everything a little bit less grindy in that sense. Maybe they'll listen to that feedback. And maybe they won't, and maybe this is just how the game is. We don't really know until the game comes out of beta and goes into launch.
Well, that's not too far off.
It's not.
March
it's
something?
March like 7th.
Damn.
Around then.
We'll know soon.
Yeah, we will know soon. But let's move on. Let's talk about a very sad JRPG. This happened just yesterday, right? Tales of Symphonia went on
yesterday, like afternoon our time. This topic could well just be called like busted ass PC ports. Tales of Symphonia is kind of just the poster child this week, this month.
For those who don't know the situation, by the way, Tales of Symphonia is a JRPG in the Tales of series that came out for GameCube in 2003.
While back.
Okay. Wow.
A while back.
Very, very, very long time ago.
I liked it.
And then, since then, it got ported to PS2 and then ported to PS3, and then the PS3 port just got ported to PC. And there was a lot of excitement for this, especially after Tales of Zestiria, another game, the latest game in the Tales series, came out for PC on launch and was great. It was awesome.
It was a good PC port. It was limited to 30 FPS, which modders actually were able to work around, despite Bandai Namco saying they couldn't make it 60 FPS. Otherwise, it was a really solid PC port. Came out day and date, which is like unheard of for a JRPG.
Yeah.
Great progress.
Very promising.
Good trend.
Symphonia was actually offered as a pre-order bonus to people if enough people pre-ordered Zestiria, which they did hit. They kind of did like almost like a Kickstarter-esque tiering system where, you know, if 1,000 people pre-ordered, you got like a free digital art book, and if 100,000 people pre-ordered, you got everybody got Tales of Symphonia free, something like that. So everyone who pre-ordered Zestiria did get Tales of Symphonia for free. So a lot of people who got the game and were playing it yesterday didn't pay for it, which is nice for them. Unfortunately, the PC port of Symphonia was not on the level of Zestiria at all. Granted, it's an older game that's been ported up to platforms, but is still, I would say, inexcusable for something that's being offered for sale. Maybe if it was only free, it's a little harder to criticize.
So what was wrong with it?
So there's a laundry list of games here, or issues here with the game. It's locked to 720p, for one thing. The internal rendering resolution, 720p, no matter what resolution you set.
Dark Souls flashback.
Similar to Dark Souls,
Yeah, that's rough.
The game just like flat out doesn't. The languages don't work. Some of the alternative languages, like in French and stuff, the letters were like all jumbled up.
Jeez.
It didn't show up properly in the engine. There were some new like localization issues, typos in English that weren't there in the older version. There were like remnants of button icons from the PlayStation version of the game mixed with Xbox style icons.
Wow.
So like there's like someone has a screenshot of a menu out there with like the left trigger button from a PlayStation controller, and then like on the other side of the screen you have like A and X from the Xbox controller. Has some like weird long load time issues in certain places. This is coming from a piece, a console from 2001. You can emulate this game on the Dolphin emulator, and it will look and run fantastically compared to this PC version. There might have been a couple other issues. Let me run down the list. The frame rate locked at 30. The original GameCube version was 60. The PlayStation versions were 30, so a little harder to be mad at them for that. Some people were having crashes. It was limited to 6 save slots. This is all from the NeoGAF thread that someone put together, just all the different issues. And they slapped some DRM on it. Just
wow.
Not any DRM, and outdated easily.
Like someone's already cracked it. So it was completely pointless to throw that DRM on there.
And that was something that Durante brought up in this great post he just did for us on the site, which I'll post in the chat right now.
Good. Yeah, so if those of you who are listening or watching are not familiar with Durante, he's a modder that is not his real name. His real name is Peter Tommen, but that is his internet name. And he originally released DS Fix for Dark Souls a few years ago, which let you run the game in any resolution, fixed a whole bunch of issues with it, and is that's the only way to play the original Dark Souls on PC. And since then, he's been working with us and writing some articles for us where he's done like port analysis, just, like he did one for Zestiria was the last one. He did The Witcher 3, and just talk about the technical aspects of the game and what it does well, what it doesn't do well, kind of grading it, so to speak.
Smart guy.
Yeah, he is extremely knowledgeable. He's an engineer. He released a tool called Jito Sato, or like generic downsampling tool, that lets you pretty much render any DirectX 9 based game in higher resolutions and downsample. So games like Dark Souls, pretty much everything up until DirectX 11 took over in the past, 4 or 5 years or so. So you can run those games at much higher resolution, make them look great. He's done a lot of other small modding projects here and there to fix games that he's passionate about, like Deadly Premonition. Yeah. And so he's been writing a lot of stuff for us about PC ports of games. And he wrote a post today about Tales of Symphonia that we titled "Why Broken PC Ports Like This Are Unacceptable." And he made some really good points, I think, about the reasons these ports should not be as broken as they are and what it would take to fix them, while trying not to be insulting to the game developers. He drew some correlations between how well games perform sales-wise and the quality of their ports, and also like the price. And we can't say that, oh look, this is a good port, it sold well. There is not necessarily a direct link between those things. But he used Koei Tecmo's games as an example. They've put quite a few Dynasty Warriors games on Steam now, some of their other series. They usually price them like full price, like $60. They're not good ports, and most of them have not performed well. And then you look at Valkyria Chronicles, has sold over 500,000 copies.
Damn.
Was sold at $30, I think, or 25 maybe.
I think it was like 20.
Maybe it was just 20. And was a really good PC port. Dragon's Dogma, excellent PC port. It sold like 200,000 copies in the past few weeks.
Yeah.
Valkyria Chronicles was 20 and included all of the game's DLC.
So the better your PC port is, the better a chance you're giving your game. Maybe it's not going to guarantee sales, but it's not going to hurt. It's sure as hell not going to hurt. And this isn't always the fault, usually probably isn't even the fault of the developers, the people making the PC version of the game. We saw with Mortal Kombat X, or was it X? X, right? The new one.
Yeah.
Coming to PC. It had a really rough PC launch, and clearly the developers working on the PC version did not have the time and resources they needed to work on that game. For Japanese games coming to PC, if it's like a Western team who has to work on that, they may not have resources in English that they can use. They might not be able to talk to the original dev team about, elements of the game that they need to work on to fix. They may have a really tight schedule and, really small amount of money to work with. It's not necessarily their fault, but it is unacceptable for publishers, whoever is making these decisions, to say, we're going to allocate this amount of money for this game and this amount of time, and we don't care what the end result is. Yeah. If you can't let your game do the bare minimum of supporting arbitrary resolutions, which Durante was able to mod into Tales of Symphonia in 15 minutes without access to any source files, any reference materials whatsoever.
That's ridiculous.
Then
that is ridiculous.
Your priorities are not with your customers.
No. And going back real quick to also the fact that they added the DRM to it, that was probably already cracked by pirates anyway, and that's what it was supposed to solve, and now also scares away modders who could potentially make the game better, right?
It makes it harder for them, for sure. Yeah.
Like, why? It's not only... it annoys me so much because it's not only kind of disrespectful to the PC game community to release a port like that, but then also it's suicidal to then drive people away who will support your game. You know, even like to a certain extent, there's some merit if a developer was like, you know what, we can't really optimize this game as well as we would like, but here's some tools so that you guys can make it even better. Then that would be awesome. But they didn't even do that. They like intentionally made it hard for people to do that, which is it's just frustrating. It's just really frustrating.
And I think a lot of that just comes down to being oblivious to some extent of what they're doing. You know, I don't think they were like, we're going to put out this poor port and then we're going to make sure modders can't, get their hands on it and fix it up. You know, it's just being oblivious in a lot of ways. And I don't know where along the chain the fault lies for that, but it is becoming less and less acceptable as time goes on, when there are perfectly good examples you can look at. Bandai Namco has released one itself. They did it 2 months ago, a month and a half ago or something. With Dark Souls, 4 years ago or whatever, I think it was much more acceptable. It was a bad version of that game that should not have been released in the state it was in, but you can understand why a developer who'd never made a PC version before and only made it because people petitioned them to and straight up said, we don't know how to work with this platform, there's some excusability there. And they did the right thing with their second game by being much more experienced working with like the US side of Bandai Namco, their publisher. And Dark Souls 2 is a really good PC port. And Dark Souls 3 will probably be just as good, if not better, hopefully. There's no excuse for this at this point. Arkham Knight, is another one.
And like you said, I think it was a little more acceptable back in the Dark Souls time, because right now... I feel like we've been in a really good stretch of ports lately.
Yeah.
Obviously Arkham Knight,
notwithstanding.
Yeah, Arkham is the huge exception to that.
And Mortal Kombat is also Warner Brothers. Like Warner Brothers has screwed the pooch on 2 games, and their response with the Mortal Kombat DLC was, we're not going to put it out on PC.
Yeah.
They clearly do not prioritize doing it right on the platform.
Yeah.
And they might not maybe they're just going to stop putting out games on PC because they don't think it's worth the money. I don't know.
But it's just I feel like we've been in a good stretch otherwise. GTA was a good port. The Battlefront had great, ran great. It ran beautifully on PC. We've been in a really good stretch of AAA games and also JRPGs with things like Valkyria Chronicles. So it's just frustrating to see such a massive failure like this, It's depressing. Let's just put it at that. And let's start opening it up and let's start taking some questions from you guys, our Twitch chat. If you are watching live on twitch.tv/PCGamer right now, then please tag us with @PCGamer in the chat and ask us anything on your mind in PC gaming this week, whether it's about my experiences or games that I saw at PAX, about Tales of Symphonia's port, about our time with the Division beta, or anything else in the world. Let us know. And if you are listening on iTunes or the website, or watching on YouTube, you're always welcome to come join us live at twitch.tv/PCGamer on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time, so you can see us be in this very hot room sweating together in real time.
Yep.
That made it sound a little weird at the end there.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I'm good.
Cool.
Questions?
Yes. Varendil says, been playing a bunch of games on GOG recently, GOG, and realized there's a bunch of games I'd love to see remade true to the originals. Games like Dungeon Keeper, Syndicate, Theme Hospital, Red Alert, the Caesar games, Free Space, etc. Do you guys have any of those games that you'd love to see remade with modern technology but true to the originals?
Oh my gosh.
So old GOG games that you'd see want remade. There's System Shock 2 is getting remade.
I think
It's something like that.
in the recent surge of Star Wars mania, you were playing Dark Forces, right?
I have been playing
and
Dark
I kept thinking about all the Star Wars games I used to play growing up, and I would love to see some of those brought to the modern day.
Yeah.
Dark Forces specifically.
Some of those work on DOSBox and stuff, but remade would be interesting.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know. Is there a distinction between like you're making it so that you can just run it on modern systems versus like making a new game in its image? I mean, those are two very different things.
You choose.
Like, I am 100% for, getting every game from the 80s and 90s on PC playable on, Windows 10, Windows 8, whatever. Being able to run 3D games at high resolutions, even if the textures are still low res or whatever. Just having the 3D models alone running at high res makes those games playable. In terms of looking at those games and like adapting them for modern design, I think a lot of stuff is dated and you can still play it and have fun and have a nostalgic experience, something like Dark Souls. But a lot of Dark Forces. A lot of Dark Forces is very much of its time. It's very 1994.
Nondescript corridors and
it would be a totally different game if you made it today. And I would just want that to be a new game,
Yeah.
I'd like the pinball game that used to be on Windows machines to be remade.
Didn't they make a new pinball?
Space Cadet Pinball?
Space Cadet Pinball.
Good pinball.
Yeah, I'd like that.
You ever play
That's my choice.
Epic's DOS pinball game?
I have not.
In the early 90s?
No, man.
It's cool. Good pinball. Epic
like
Mega Games pinball. I think a lot, like a game like, I think Homeworld. Did he mention Homeworld, or was that just in my head?
It might have been in your
Homeworld
head.
is
in your head.
Just got a sequel.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go with
Deserts of
If
Karak.
there's an interesting world there to build with, or great characters or lore or something, do something new with it if you can. You don't need to remake a game from the ground up and just retell the same story. There's always room for new stuff.
Yeah. The Kookaburra asks, what do you guys think about Stardew Valley? I am super excited for Stardew Valley.
I made a point to cover that news on Friday while you were at PAX.
Yeah.
It's coming out end of February?
Yeah,
February
it is.
26th or something?
I'm so excited.
This game comes up in conversation, or at least in the periphery of our conversations, and I still don't quite understand what it is.
Stardew Valley is kind of a combination of Rune Factory, which is basically Harvest Moon plus RPG.
Okay.
And like Animal Crossing-ish, but on the PC, made for the PC. And it won't have this at launch, but it will then have 4-player co-op. So basically, the game
Planting carrots together.
Yeah, the game is you're raising a farm, you're starting a farm, and you are building up your farm and planting crops and building new things and raising animals. And then there's also a town where the town is full of all these very like what's the word I'm looking for? Intentionally made citizens. They're all very fleshed out. They have their own schedules and things they do, and then you can make relationships with them, and then you can get married and have a kid, and the kid will grow up.
Important question about those relationships. If you can play co-op, can you get into a love triangle with your best friends?
Maybe, because you can still do all the relationship stuff when you're playing 4-player co-op.
I wonder if you can
raising
compete
a
for
farm
the
together.
love of...
Probably. You probably could.
This got way darker than I was expecting. Someone's going to end with a broken heart.
And then we should
Let
do
the
that.
carrots rot.
We should like go after the same person in Stardew Valley together.
That sounds like
see who can win their love.
That seems like it'd be a fun article.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. And then also there's RPG elements where you get a sword and you go into caves and fight things and try to get minerals and stuff. And there's a little bit of crafting too. And then you can design your house and place furniture and get new furniture
This is
pieces.
the most Tom Marks game ever made.
Oh man, you don't even know. It's got
just
pixel
put a
art,
card
too.
game in
Just
there
keep-
and you're done.
The crazy thing is,
There are
Stardew
mini
Valley
games,
is,
actually,
is
so.
one developer.
Yeah.
one
One
guy.
guy.
Dude named Concerned Ape.
And he did literally everything.
It's crazy.
Most of the time when you say like, oh yeah, it's a game made by one person. Well, they had outside help for the sound, you know, or maybe the art. Or
they
something.
freelanced something.
Yeah, or like, you know, whatever. He like is a musician. He's a programmer. He taught himself pixel art, which is part of, like, I think a big part of the reason why it took him so long to put the game out, because he kept redoing the art because he got better at the art. So yeah, he is the only person who's touched this game.
And it's coming out, so the single player, he decided that he wasn't going to delay the game to finish the multiplayer, basically. So the single player version of the game is coming out later this month, end of the month, and then at some point in the future, when he finishes it, he's just going to add the co-op to the game. It's not going to be paid. It's not going to be anything like that. It's just he's going to, when he's finished what he wanted in the game, he's going to just update it.
I hope that's within the first, like, 3 months.
I think it won't be super long.
Yeah, I hope it's fairly quick. But, that, I mean, co-op network code and stuff, that's not simple stuff. A simple thing to add in, so.
I'm sorry, Kookaburra. We just spent a long time answering that question, but yes, the answer is we are excited for Stardew Valley, or at least I am personally.
I'm excited for it too.
Panzerg asks, Wes, you've probably answered this question before, but maybe a truncated version of Vive or Oculus?
Oof.
I know the answer you gave me before with this.
Well, I think the Vive is better hardware. The Oculus is lighter, which is really important. The Vive Pre is... I do not think that should be the hardware that they sell. I think it's still too heavy. I don't know how you felt wearing it.
I was wearing it riding a bicycle, so it was a little different. I've noticed it pinched on my nose because I was like breathing through my nose, and then suddenly I couldn't while I was biking.
I think the Vive Pre is still a bit too heavy, and I hope they can make it as light and comfortable as the Oculus. But it has a better field of view, which really does make a difference when you're wearing it. The camera on the front is really significant for you being able to see things in your environment if you want to, and game developers will be able to use that data. But you can have that to help you not trip over the cable or sit in a chair or see the wall in front of you or whatever. But nobody knows, except for Valve and HTC, I guess, how much it's going to cost.
Probably more, right?
If it's not more expensive than the Oculus, they're taking a loss on that hardware, and it's going to be a giant story. Like, people are going to flip out if that thing is only $600. I would not be surprised if it's $1,000.
Wow.
That's what I'm settling on.
So that, you know, I can't answer that question for you because that's a huge price difference. Is it worth it? Probably. I mean, it's pretty impressive hardware.
Pretty relative, yeah.
But that also depends on the games, and, you know, we still don't know exactly what's going to be there at launch and how those demos that we've tried will actually translate into full games, how long you'll want to play those games. There's still a ton of unknowns. They're both pretty amazing pieces of technology, so neither one is going to suck, but it's hard to say right now. The answer is stay tuned.
Suspense.
All right, let's take a couple more. There was here it is. OZNRG asks, Lego The Force Awakens on PC or no? I don't think they've specifically said it's not going to be on PC.
No, I think they announced it for like PC as well.
Yeah. If you guys don't know, there will be a Lego The Force Awakens game coming out in June.
I haven't played any of those Lego games, but that one kind of interests me.
So the reason I pulled this question out actually is because the Lego games are actually really fun.
I love the Lego games.
Sam loves them as well.
They're not like, you know, overly complex, deep games that you're going to lose yourself in, but they're fun games.
They're the best, like, weekend, like Sunday morning, just going to be lazy, put it on.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the Hulk, but Lego, and smash a bunch of shit.
And their co-op. Their co-op is really fun, too.
Oh, yeah.
They're just like really fun little adventure-y games. Like, you know, I talk a lot about how like the 3D platformer is kind of no more to a certain extent, and that might be changing with VR coming back or coming. But the Lego games have always kind of been those 3D platformy adventure games, and kind of lives on with those. They're really fun little games, so I'm excited for that.
Pretty cheap on Steam usually too. Good sales.
They said it's going to bridge the story somewhat between episode and 6 and 7.
That's the funniest part about
like,
this.
Is this like the canon version of what happened between Star Wars movies?
I don't know, but I want to pull up.
You get to see the birth of Kylo Ren in Lego form.
I'm sorry to Twitch or to podcast listeners, but I'm pulling up this amazing image that they have for the PR of the game. It's like Kylo Ren with his lightsaber, except in Lego form, and it's incredible.
That thing is going to be, it's even more absurd and unwieldy than in the actual movie. It's pretty great.
Yeah, it's pretty silly.
Yeah.
But let's take some more
I'm curious.
questions.
Like, there have been a bunch of books already that take place in that between time. So, like, is this Lego thing gonna like tie into the books? Because they're very strict about the canon now. So, I
It's
don't know.
so weird.
That interests me as a Star Wars geek.
Yeah.
I don't know if I care about that story necessarily, but I'm very curious what they're
what the
doing.
hell could it be?
I'm curious.
Killian asks, any thoughts on Star Citizen? We've talked about Star Citizen before. I haven't personally played it, but I wanted to bring this up because it's free for this week, I believe. It's free to play for the next week. So if you're curious about Star Citizen and you've heard all the like drama about it, just go play it. Like, stop listening to what other people have to say about it and just try the game, because that's what I'm going to do. I don't know anything about it, actually, like, really.
Spaceships.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go play Star Citizen. Oh, Mark Hamill.
Gillian Anderson.
Dude, there was the funniest thing in the world when James was playing The Witness the first day it came out. I just need to bring this up. It was amazing. Oh, did I already bring it up on the show last week?
I don't know.
James was yelling. He was like, every time he solved a puzzle, he was like, "What now, Jonathan Blow?" Like, just like dunking on him. Like, every time he solved the puzzle, it was like he was facing, just like
Including
showing up.
like the first puzzle where you draw a line from left to the right.
Oh, yes. It was pretty funny.
Owned.
Let's take a few more before we finish up. JBJ Blaze, subscriber JBJ Blaze asks, firstly, are you guys going to review Cobalt? I'm not sure if we're going to review it, but I am interested in that game. I like Cobalt a lot. I think it's another cool little action shootery kind of party game. And it's also interesting because it's been being developed since before local co-op shootery party games were like very on the rise. So I'm interested to see it come from that perspective. And also asks, do you think XCOM 2 being PC exclusive, that more games should follow the same path? That's an interesting question.
I think in this case it was healthy for XCOM 2 being a very good PC game. I would love an ideal world where exclusivity wasn't a thing and every game, could be everything it wanted to be, but reality dictates money is a limiting factor there.
Yeah.
I only care about exclusivity to the point that it lets you make the game as it should be, or that they want to make. And they talked about that with XCOM. I think that game's going to get ported to consoles eventually.
Absolutely will.
But if there's a distinct limiting factor that you can't do on a console that you can do on PC, then sure, make it exclusive, or at least go out of your way to make the PC version what it should be. If XCOM 2 comes out on consoles, even if it came out on consoles day and date, that's fine, but the modding tools should be there for the PC version,
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I think that unless there is something that you can only do on a specific console or system or whatever that you think is vital to the game, like if it was a 3DS game and you needed 3D on that game or whatever for some reason.
Basically every first-party Nintendo game makes use of their hardware in a way that is very specific to that hardware.
Yeah. As long as if it's not something like that, then I don't think exclusivity is a good in any situation, even if it is PC exclusive. XCOM, like you guys said, XCOM takes advantage of why it's exclusive on PC. But for the most part, just have more people playing more good games is always a good thing, regardless of what they're
PC
playing.
made like $4 billion or something in revenue, PC games last year. A lot of that's like Asian MMOs, but still, it's doing okay. We don't need like exclusives to sell systems or something.
Yeah, no,
it's fine.
So there were a lot of questions today, so I apologize if we couldn't get them all get to all of them. Man, my words just jumped out of my mouth there.
What our word?
I don't know. What our word indeed, James. But we're out of time today, so I hope that if you did have a question that you want to ask, you either send it to one of us at Twitter. All of our Twitter handles are there on the screen. And otherwise, we'll see you next week, twitch.tv/PCGamer at 1 p.m. Pacific time. I've been Tom Marks. This is James Davenport. That's Wes Fenlon. Thanks very much, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.